Welcome to 30 Minute Theology. I am Olu Shako, and this is where we dive into the Word of God looking for practical principles to help us in our everyday life. And today's lesson, we will be back in the book of Joshua, this time chapter 8. And the theme of today's lesson is redemption. Let's dive in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid or discouraged. Take all of the fighting men and attack Ai, for I have given you the king of Ai, his people, his town, and his land." So the Lord is saying to Joshua that you can go forward and fight now. Joshua and the people of Israel fought Ai before with about 3,000 people, and 36 died because they did not go about it the right way. There was disobedience within the camp, and the disobedience of one person brought down the entire nation of Israel. This time, though, instead of just asking each other, what should they do? And simply relying on the word of the spies, they sought God. And what did he tell them? One, don't be afraid, which they need to hear that based on what just happened. Why were they not afraid? They didn't have to be afraid because he was going to be with them. That's what they lacked the last time. That's what their ancestors lacked after they didn't listen to the Lord the first time when the spies came back and said it's a land of milk and honey, but the other ones were like, oh, it's giants in the land and we can't do it. And they believed them. And then after the Lord's like, all right, I'm not going with you. They're like, okay, well, now I'm going to go. He's like, man, I'm not going with you. And that's a great reminder. We can't make God do what we want him to do. We need to be in his timing, which we'll talk about that a bit more as we go on. But they did not need to be afraid because God was with them. Also, told them don't be discouraged because that previous defeat was pretty crushing. This time they took all the men instead of 3,000. And he said, I am giving you the king, which represents authority. The authority of the land is in your hand. His people, so those bearing arms, those who bring about opposition, those are in your arm. Those are in your hands, I should say. The city, so the organization, the government, that was in your hand, as well as the land. I'm putting all of this in your hands. If you've been with us for a little while, back in our obedience lesson, which you can find just by clicking on the live feed and going, it's the second one down from this one. The Lord spoke to Joshua before they entered into Jericho and said something that was very similar. In verse 2 of chapter 6, the Lord said to Joshua, look, I have handed Jericho, its king, and its fighting men over to you. You will destroy them as you destroyed Jericho and its king, but this time you may keep the plunder and the livestock for yourselves. Set an ambush behind the town. So unlike Jericho, where they could not take any of the spoils, everything was devoted to God. All of the people were to be destroyed. All of the cattle and the sheep and the livestock were to be destroyed. Don't take any of them for yourselves. Take all the precious metals and take them into the house of God. This time, said, look, you all can take the spoils. You can take whatever it is that they have. And the reason that they failed when they went to fight Ai in the first place was because someone took some of those things that God said don't take. They took what was God's. And because of that, they came to ruin. And they also cost the lives of about 3 dozen people. The person who did that, his name was Achan. He died, his family died, his livestock died, all of it was burned. Had he just waited just a little bit longer, he could have been enriched. Again, it is important to follow God's plan and his timing. His way is best. Not only did he say that he was going to be with them. Not only did he state that he was giving them all of these different levels of authority, but he also gave them a strategy. They just took the 3,000, went in and said, "Oh, yeah, we got this." And they didn't, because they did not have God's direction. So Joshua and all the fighting men set out to attack Ai. Joshua chose 30,000, not 3,000, but 30,000 of his best warriors and set them out at night. With these orders, hide in ambush behind the town and be ready for action. So, time for some action and be ready for it when it comes. When our main army attacks, the men of Ai will come out and fight as they did before, and we will run away from them. We will let them chase us until we have drawn them away from the town. For they will say, "The Israelites are running away from us as they did before." Then, while we're running from them, you'll jump from your ambush and take possession of the town, for the Lord your God will give it to you. Set the town on fire as the Lord commanded. You have your orders. So they had the orders from God to go about and to set an ambush and to come out from that ambush and to sack the town. And when they sack it, to set it on fire. And not only did they have the command, Joshua reiterated it. It is very, very sound strategy to use history to your advantage. As many of you know, I am a avid fight fan. I watch all the fights I can. I read everything I can about fights, and I cover fighting on my show, The Main Card. Especially in boxing, you hear the term often, wrinkles and new wrinkles in your game. And that's just to state that that specific fighter has picked up new strategies and new tools to use when they're fighting. Maybe it's a pull counter, maybe it's a different defense. Maybe they've learned how to cut off the ring better. Maybe they've learned a defense like a Shakur Stevenson, where they're able just to lean back and they don't have to move too much to get out of the way of shots. Just different techniques and different wrinkles. And again, it's good to use history to your advantage, which is what Israel did. Whenever there's a rematch of a fight, the person who really is in the most danger is the one who won the first fight, because they did the things that they needed to do to be victorious, and they don't know what kinds of changes that other person will make coming into it, or what changes they even can implement. You don't know what you need to do differently. And a lot of times when you've been victorious in a fight, there's a level of self-reliance that comes to it, a level of arrogance. It's, "Oh, I beat him already. I know what to do. You can't, he can't hang with me. I did this, and this." And a lot of times you get lax. And this is what was transpiring with AI. Little did they know that there were wrinkles in Israel's game. So they left and went to the place of ambush between Bethel and the west side of Ai. But Joshua remained among the people in the camp that night. Early the next morning, Joshua roused his men and started toward Ai. All the fighting men who were with Joshua marched in front of the town and camped on the north side of Ai, with a valley between them and the town. That night, Joshua sent about 5,000 men to lie in ambush between Bethel and Ai on the west side of the town. West side, I'm sorry, I can't help it. From the west side of St. Louis. So anytime I see west side, I get happy. So they stationed the main army north of the town and the ambush west of the town. Joshua himself spent the night in the valley. So this time, instead of just sending, 2 to 3,000 men as they did the time before, they were taking everyone. And in doing so, it gave them options that they didn't have before. Now they could surround the city versus just depending on one band of soldiers to do everything for them. When the king of Ai saw the Israelites across the valley, he and all his army hurried out early in the morning and attacked the Israelites at the place overlooking the Jordan Valley. But he didn't realize there was an ambush behind the town. So, in other versions, it says that he chose a place that was suitable, being the king of Ai. And the place that they chose to fight, it was fitting for them. It was suitable. It was a good place to fight for them. So often, we'll choose what seems most advantageous. But if we are unaware of what the enemy's strategy is, if we don't know what they're bringing to us, what seems like an advantage could really be our disadvantage. And that's what happened here. He didn't go down into the valley or into the desert plain, what's called the Araba. He didn't go down there. He stayed where, the grass was a little greener. They chose what they believed to be advantageous for war. And in other cases, it very well may have been, but not in this situation. Joshua and the Israelite army fled toward the wilderness as they were badly beaten. Then all the men in the town were chased out, were called out, were called out to chase after them. In this way, they were lured away from the town. There was not a man left in Ai or Bethel who did not chase after the Israelites, and the town was left wide open. In an effort to attack, they left their city defenseless. They called out to everybody, hey, Israel is back again, and we're beating them again. Those cowards are on the run again. Come on, let's get them. Let's take them out once and for all. And they ran out in offense. But you'll hear, especially in football, that the greatest offense is a good defense, or that defense is your best offense. So, though you need to be offensive minded, you need to, just like in fighting sports, while you're being offensive, you better keep your guard up because you don't know what's coming back at you. And if you don't keep your guard up, you'll get caught open and get hurt. And the shots that hurt the worst are the ones you don't see, which is what Ai was getting ready to encounter. Again, their arrogance, they're thinking, we got them again. They can't hang with us. They're nothing. Look, they're running again, not knowing that the retreat was planned, not knowing that what looked like a defensive move was actually a trap, which you'll often see fighters do. They'll leave something open, or they'll throw a lazy jab out to get you to open up to throw something else. They will get you to walk into certain shots by how they throw things and using your strengths and your patterns against you. Arrogance is trusting in your abilities over God's ability. And that's what was happening with Ai. They were being arrogant, trusting in what they could do, trusting in what has happened historically, versus looking to God, who is the one that gives us the strength and the ability to do any and everything that we do. The fact that I'm able to sit here today and to speak to you, that words are coming out of my mouth, that my mind is forming them, and that my body is reacting to the things that my brain is telling it to say. All of these things are done because God allows me to do them. Whatever nuggets that you get out of this and that I've gotten out of this, it's because God is giving it to me. It's not my rugged good looks, though they are there, but that comes from God. It's not because of my intellect, which is there, but again, it comes from God. Whatever it is that we have, whatever it is that we do, we're only able to do it because God allows it. And at any moment, that thing that we have, that we hold in such high esteem, can be gone. which is why it's so important that your trust and that your life is focused on fulfilling God's plan for you in doing what he says and being obedient, which was the first lesson in this three-part series. Obedience is the most important thing. Without it, everything else falls apart. Let's continue. Then the Lord said to Joshua, point the spear in your hand toward Ai, for I will hand the town over to you. Joshua did as he was commanded. As soon as Joshua gave his signal, all the men in ambush jumped from their position and poured into the town. They quickly captured it and set it on fire. If this sounds familiar, it should. It's reminiscent of what Moses did in battle when he held up his rod. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. More to come. When the men of Ai looked behind them, smoke from the town was filling the sky, and they had nowhere to go. For the Israelites who fled in the direction of the wilderness now turned on their pursuers. So they were running to the wilderness. They were running to a barren place. They were running to a place that, really had no development, running away from the city to a place that you really wouldn't want to be, a place that's more dangerous. But now they're turning back on their pursuers because, again, it was a trap. When Joshua and all of the other Israelites saw that the ambush had succeeded and that smoke was rising from the town, they turned and attacked the men of Ai. Meanwhile, the Israelites who were inside the town came out and attacked the enemy from the rear. So the men of Ai were caught in the middle with Israelite fighters on both sides. Israel attacked them, and not a single person survived or escaped. Only the king of Ai was taken alive and brought to Joshua. So all of the men of Ai came out, and Bethel came out to fight, came out to destroy Israel, but came to their own destruction, with the exception of the king. The king was kept. Why didn't they kill the king? More to come. Let's continue. When the Israelite army finished chasing and killing all the men of Ai in the open fields, they went back and finished off everyone inside. So all the men had left the city, but the women and children were still there. But they decided to go back and kill them as well. So the entire population of Ai, including men and women, was wiped out that day, 12,000 in all. For Joshua kept holding out his spear until everyone who lived in Ai was completely destroyed. This was a voluntary devotion to God. The Lord didn't say you need to kill all the people, but they chose to do it. Again, here we have Joshua holding out his spear. And that sounds like something that happened previously, something that happened with someone who Joshua looked up to. But hold on for a little bit. We're going to get there in just a minute. Let's finish these last two verses. Only the livestock and the treasures of the town were not destroyed. So they held the livestock, they kept the treasures because, again, the Lord said they could spoil it. For the Israelites kept these as plunder for themselves, as the Lord had commanded Joshua. So Joshua burned the town of Ai, and it became a permanent mound of ruins, desolate to this very day. Who is it that held out a spear, a rod, a staff, and Israel had success? None other than Moses in Exodus chapter 17 at Rephidim. So we'll read that quickly. Verse 8 through 13. While the people of Israel were still at Rephidim, The warriors of Amalek attacked them. Moses commanded Joshua, the same Joshua who's holding the spear out now, choose men to go out and fight the army of Amalek for us tomorrow. For us. Tomorrow I will stand at the top of the hill holding the staff of God in my hand. So Joshua chose men to go and fight this time, but instead of going to fight against AI, he held the rod. I mean, he held the spear like Moses held the rod when he and the men went out to fight. So Joshua did what Moses had commanded and fought the army of Amalek. Meanwhile, Moses, Aaron, and Hur climbed to the top of a nearby hill. As long as Moses held the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. Moses' arms soon became tired. He could no longer hold them up. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands, so his hands held steady until sunset. As a result, Joshua overwhelmed the army of Amalek in battle, just like Joshua and Israel overwhelmed Ai. But this time, Joshua was the one the holding the item versus being the one who was actively engaged in fighting. Back to Judges chapter 28. Joshua impaled the king of Ai on a sharpened pole and left him there until evening. At sunset, the Israelites took down the body as Joshua commanded and threw it in front of the town gate. They piled a great heap of stones over him that can still be seen today. So this is why they kept the king. They kept the king because they wanted to make an example of him. And how did they make that example of him? By putting him on a tree, not the cross, but impaling him like Haman planned to impale Mordecai and his people and was the one impaled. Now, the king of Ai was impaled. He died in the hands of Joshua, where when Jesus died on the cross, he died so that we could be in his hands. On top of that, they took him down, being the king of Ai, threw him at the gates, heaped up a bunch of stones in front of it, and that stood and served as a memorial of what happens to those who oppose Israel. It is so unfortunate that the children of Israel stopped fighting when they ran into a little bit of opposition. Again, the Lord showed that he would fight on their behalf, but when things got tough, they decided to make concessions. And that's not what God was calling for. He was calling for them to fight. He doesn't raise punks, he raises those who fight. And sometimes, just sometimes, the things you're going through it so God can make you stronger, so God can show you how to fight. He wants you to have that opposition so that you can overcome and then say that it was by God that it was done. And he strengthens your muscles, just like in lifting weights. You lift heavier and heavier weights and it hurts. You know, you have the micro tear in your muscles, but that's what builds it up. That's what gives you the ability to go on and go further. That's what gives you the ability to lift more. It's because of the pain that you've gone through in fighting through that struggle, in fighting through that opposition, in fighting through that thing that seems to be too heavy for you, too big for you, too fill in the blank for you. When you're fighting and you are relying on the strength of God, it builds your faith muscle. You believe, hey, this can be done. Like Joshua and Caleb said, it was like, look, God is with us. This can be done. Likewise, who cares what giants are in your life? Who cares what enemy is coming against you? If God be for you, he's more than the world against you. So remember what God has said. If he said he'll do it, then he's going to do it. And he's not a man that he is going to lie or like we are, that he changes his mind. No, if he says it, it's got to happen, which is why lying is such a horrible thing when we say things and we don't do it, because that's literally who God is. He is his word, and whatever he says, being his word, comes to pass. So whatever he said that he's going to do for us, regardless of the opposition, regardless of how bad it looks, it's going to happen. Keep fighting until you receive the promise of God. Do not give up. Then Joshua built an altar to the Lord, the God of Israel, on Mount Ebal. He followed the commands that Moses, the Lord's servant, had written in the book of instruction. Make an altar from stones that are uncut and have not been shaped with iron tools. Then on the altar, they presented burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. So in the previous chapters, chapter 6 specifically, it was shown that when God moves, it's important to worship him, to take time, make an altar, do something, and set it up to worship the God who is moving on your behalf. Don't take it lightly that God is doing things for you. And Israel was not, because just the time before, when they came to fight, they were defeated. Why? Because God was not with them. This time, when they go to fight, they have great victory because of God's leading, and they took time to worship him for his goodness, realizing if God did not do this for us and through us, then it would not be done. It's not my might, it's God's might in me. And as the Israelites watched, Joshua copied onto the stones of the altar the instructions Moses had given them. So Joshua is taking time to remind them of the law. It's good to remember his statutes when he moves, because when you're focusing on his statutes, when you're focusing on his power, when you're focusing on his direction, it keeps you from getting the big head. It keeps you from getting arrogant and trusting in your abilities versus recognizing that it's God's hand at work in your life. All right, last couple of verses here. Then all the Israelites, foreigners and native born alike, along with the elders, officers, and judges, were divided into two groups. One group stood in front of Mount Gerizim, the other in front of Mount Ebal. Each group faced the other, and between them stood Levitical priests carrying the ark of the Lord's covenant. This was all done according to the commandments that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had previously given for blessing the people of Israel. Joshua then read to them all the blessings and curses Moses had written in the book of instruction. Every word of every command that Moses had ever given was read to the entire assembly of Israel, including women and children and foreigners who lived among them. God's blessings and curses were read for all the people. There was no one who was outside of Israel, even the foreign born people, even those who came and tagged along, like Rahab and her family. Everyone heard the word of God. Everyone heard his blessings and his instructions, as well as what would happen if they chose to go their own way. All right, key points for today's lesson. And feel free to drop something in the chat. We will show it on stage and let your voice be heard by all. It's important to follow God's plan and his timing. We can't do things on our own time. We can't do it our own way. We have to do what God says when he says it. Otherwise, it won't work. Arrogance is trusting in your abilities over God's hand at work in your life. Again, whatever it is that we do, just you can ask Nebuchadnezzar when we get to heaven, if he's in heaven, even. But you can ask God about that. You think you got it all together. You think you've done all of this. In just a moment, your mind could be gone, your health could be gone, your life could be gone. Everything we have, and everything we do, we're able to do because God has given us the ability to do those things. When God moves, think on his statutes and make space to worship him. Thank him, praise him for what he's done. He doesn't have to do it, but he does. And remember his words and his actions. Keep fighting until you receive whatever it is that he's promised you. Doesn't matter how big the opposition or how impossible things look. With God, all things are possible. That does it for today's lesson regarding redemption. We can be redeemed. We can overcome our missteps when we obey God and he gives us that opportunity to turn to him and follow. Until next time, God bless and keep it together.